She could be compared to a pure calf who is eating in the fields. ומעניין מדברי הקדוש ברוך הוא לאברהם ביחס לשילוחה של הגר דומה שלמדו חז"ל דבר שונה. But we have a contrasting comment regarding Sarah when there is a dispute. There is a dispute in last week's parsha, which is really the opening for many, many educational discussions of what do you do when there is a student who disturbs other students. When Yishmael is disturbing Yitzchak, when they are finally in the tent together, because for many years they were in separate tents, and Yishmael is in a tent with Yitzchak, and Yishmael is badly influencing Yitzchak, Sarah turns around to Abraham and says, you've got to throw Yishmael out. And Abraham doesn't want to. And there is a lot of friction between Abraham and Sarah regarding what to do with Yishmael. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu intervenes and he says to Abraham, Kol asher tomah Sarah, shma b'kola. Everything that Sarah says, you have to do. There's absolute intervention here from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayomer Elokim el Avraham, al yira b'einecha al ana v'al amatecha, kol asher tomah elecha Sarah, shema b'kola. And what they learned in the Midrash was, Mikan ata lamed shaya Avram tafel es Sarah b'neviut. So what Rabbi Mital wants to do is contrast these two comments. Was Sarah a tumima, was she neviah? Do they have to be contrasting or can they go together? הקושי במדרש זה הוא כפול. ראשית, אם אמנם התכונות המאפיינות את שרה היו התמימות והפשטות, if Sarah was so pashut, if she's such a simple person, כיצד ייתכן שהייתה נביאה גדולה? How could she be such an incredible neviah when we know that nevuah is to do with seichel, it's not to do with tumimut, it's to do with intellectuality and to get to a high level. אף יותר מאברהם, כאשר חלק מתכונות הנביא הן עיסוק במושכלות ובעניינים גדולים ורוחים לגמרי לא פשוטים. That a Navi has to be involved in things that aren't simple, they're not pashut. So Sarah was a Neviah, she was more of a Neviah than Avram, one Midrash says, and the other Midrash says she was Tumimah. How do we reconcile these two things? The Rambam talks about the intellectual capacity that is required for someone in Nevuah. He writes as follows, Yimashech ba'otan ha'inyanim ha'gedolim ha'rechokim v'tiyeh lo da nechona lahavin u'lahasig v'hu mitkadesh v'olech u'poresh midarkei klal ha'am הולכים במחשכי הזמן והולך ומזרז עצמו ומלמד נפשו שלא תהיה לו מחשבה כלל באחד מדברים בטלים. The way the Rambam describes a Navi is intellectual supremacy. That isn't the basic stereotype of someone who is tamim, of someone who is just pure and simple. אלא שגם בלא תיאור שרה כעגלה תמימה, כיצד הסיקו חז"ל מכך שכתוב כל אשר תאמר אליך שרה, שמע בקולה שהייתה היא נביאה גדולה מאברהם. And besides that, just because God says to Avram that he has to listen to his wife in an educational debate, why does that mean she's a better prophet than him? Why? She could just be more perceiving of a human being. Wives are often more perceiving of their children than the husbands are. You know that. You twist your dad around your little finger all the time with your crying and your moaning and your groaning. You know how to get your dad to do what you want, but he has no voting powers at home. Mum has the vote. He has perhaps observer status. Mum's in charge of the decision making. So why can't she be perceptive without being called a Navi? Why does she have to be a Neviah? Because God said you've got to listen to her voice. This wasn't about a Nevuah. It was about understanding the dynamic at home between Yishmael and Yitzchak. So we essentially have two questions. One Midrash calls her a Tumimah, a pure person, whereas the other Midrash says that she has Nevuah greater than Avraham Avinu, which doesn't deflect from purity, but it does suggest complexity. And secondly, why does the Midrash conclude that Sarah is a Neviah just because she knows what to do with Ishmael? And because what she's saying is correct with regards to Ishmael. We know from the Torah that God speaks to Avram time and again. Every parsha, God is speaking to Avram. ואילו הפעם היחידה בה ניתן להבין שהקדוש ברוך הוא פונה על שרה לא הייתה אלא בנימה ביקורת. The only time God speaks to Sarah is critique. When Sarah laughs because she's told she's going to have a child and God says, why did you laugh? He says, I didn't laugh. He said, you did laugh. It's a negative discussion between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Sarah. She laughs at being told she's going to have a child. God is not happy with her laugh. And then she denies the laugh and she is critiqued on the laugh. So נראה, last paragraph, שחז"ל רוצים ללמדנו שאין כלל סתירה בין פשטותה של שרה לבין גדלותה בנביאות. There is a lesson being learned here, which I think is an important lesson. We'll get there in a minute. שרה הייתה גדולה מאברהם במעלת הנבואה דווקא בשל תכונת התמימות שבה התבלטה. It wasn't in every component. Things don't have to be black and white. Things don't have to be that if she is a better Nevi'ah than Abraham, it's in every single element. Rav Amital wants to suggest there was a specific facet of Sarah Imenu that was greater than Abraham. אין ספק שהקדוש ברוך הוא התגלה לאברהם ודיבר עמו פעמים רבות יותר מאשר שרה. There's no doubt, textually there's no doubt that God spoke to Abraham much more than he spoke to Sarah. אולם נבואה מבטאת קרבה לקדוש ברוך הוא, but נבואה isn't only about intellectuality, it's not only about communication, it's about קרבה, it's about closeness with הקדוש ברוך הוא, והתמימות הפשוטה שהייתה בשרה הביאה אותה להיות קרובה לקדוש ברוך הוא אפילו יותר מאברהם. The tmimut that Sarah had, I'm going to try and explain what that is, actually brought her closer to Abraham. From that facet of Nevi'ut, she was closer to God than Abraham. What is Chokhmah and what is Tamimut? Rabbi Nachman Breslev has a story. It's not here the story. He has a story where he talks about the Chacham and the Tam, two very, very different people. The Chacham is a complex intellectual who is never happy in his life because he's always got a question about something, he's always negating something. And the Tam is someone who simply accepts things for what they are. Not an idiot, as sometimes suggested when we're learning the Haggadah, not someone who's simple, but someone with an incredible amount of humility. The essence of a nav. Let me give you an example because I don't think that Tam and Chacham are necessarily two different people. I think Tam and Chacham can be different stages in our life. I can speak about myself. That's the person I apparently know best. When I was your age or just a bit younger from your age, if I went to a shiur and I was told in a shiur that this is what the Midrash says and this is what happened and this is what Chazal say, I would simply nod and lap it up. I would just enjoy it and lap it up. Everything was, there was no contesting anything that any of the Rishonim said, any of the Acharonim said. When people told you something, I believe them. That's what a Tam is. A Tam accepts things at face value, accepts them for what they are, doesn't get complex and involved and get themselves into knots. Later on in life, I found that you get this chokhmah. The chokhmah comes from a wisdom of life, but it also messes things up to a degree. And an element of cynicism enters your whole being. Where does the cynicism come from? The cynicism comes from disappointment. The longer you live in life, the more experiences you have. And the more experiences you have in life, the more you are exposed to disappointment. When we're young, we live in an ideal life. If our parents have done, and I think most of our parents have done what they were meant to do, we have been protected and we've been protected from real life. We never paid bills. I had a childhood where I had no idea if my parents had difficulties at home. I was unaware of them. I'm talking about financial difficulties. I was unaware. Any issue that my mother and father were dealing with, I had no idea of at all. I grew up as a naive young child, which I think is the way it should be. They didn't sit down with me and share with me financial challenges or familial broiguses. Nothing. I knew nothing, was aware of nothing. And therefore, my viewpoint of life until quite a late age was a very, very naive but pure viewpoint of life. I trusted people for what they were. I accepted people for what they were. Tamim. And therefore, I accepted what I was told for what it was. I never questioned. Just what it was. And that's a wonderful way of living. As you meet disappointment in life, as you are let down by people or let down by yourself, you tend to lose trust, lose faith in other people and in situations. And the whole approach to life can become very, very complex. I think that certainly has happened to me on certain occasions where, I don't know, the first time I ever came across this, I was working for Bnei Akiva. Money, it comes up with money. It always comes up with money. I was working for Bnei Akiva, and a man applied for a scholarship for his daughter for camp. And I just naively said, okay, he needs money, give him money. But because I was a young guy, I was only 23, just a couple of years ago now, I was a young guy, and I remember I had to take all my decisions to a board of adults. And I remember very clearly, I came with this man's name, I gave him a sheet, and I said, this man needs a full scholarship, and I said yes. And the entire room of adults burst out laughing, which was awkward because I hadn't made a joke, and I realized that they must be laughing at me, and I got very embarrassed, and I said, well, what's the joke? And then one of the adults was kind enough to share with me, this man who you're proposing we give a full scholarship to, he owns a yacht. And I remember total despondence that a person would take advantage of me and my naivety, would try and take money out of charity when the man owns a yacht. My other lesson in life came when I actually phoned the man up. And I said to him, can you explain to me why you asked for a scholarship? And the man spent the next 20 minutes explaining to me how hard it was to upkeep a yacht, and that he was totally justified in asking for a scholarship. Do you know how much it costs to keep a yacht? And you're staring at the man down the phone and saying, this money is for people who don't have bread at home. It's not for people who have yachts. And he keeps coming back at me. And at the end of that conversation, the effect that conversation has on you, even though it's not logical, it's not that every single person you meet is a cheat. But you start to lose faith. And when it happens again, you lose faith. When it happens again, you lose faith. Then you just don't believe. And your chokhmat chayim, your wisdom of life, your experience of life, is pogea on your tmimut. It takes away from your tmimut. I went to see a rabbi that I go to see very often. It's a very special rabbi in Tel Aviv, a very special rabbi. He held my hand once and told me my children's names. He's a very, very special man. He actually told me my children's names, all of their names, first, second, and third names. I go to speak to him sometimes with my wife, and I asked him, is it possible, if you were a tam and you became a chacham, to become a tam again? And he looked at me, it was very disappointing, he said, I don't think so. Which was, this story of Rabbi Nachman has taken a lot of my time up. What we're trying to say here is that Sarah was her tmimut. Now, what we will normally make fun of this in a social climate if someone is naive. We go up to someone and you say, that used to be a very unfunny joke. I heard that gullible was taken out of the dictionary, and so I said, really? Yeah, see, you didn't laugh. That used to be whatever. So the disadvantage you feel that if you're tamim, if you believe something that is said to you all the time, is that people are going to take you for a ride, people are going to cheat you, and you're going to come out a loss. But then I'm asking myself the question, really? Have you really lost? If you remain tamim, if you remain innocent, if you remain pure, why have you lost? Why is it better to have a cynical viewpoint of life, a complex viewpoint of life, that everything is complex, everything needs to be discussed, everything needs to be turned over, as opposed to someone says, oh, what Rashi says, that's what Rashi says. If that's what he says, that's what he says. I don't question Rashi, because Rashi learned Chumash without Rashi. And I learned Chumash with Rashi. So why do I question Rashi? Why should I question? Why should I question Rambam? That to me, more that I once had, is something that I ache for. So this is Chazal b'Midrash Melamdim Otanu, second paragraph, שבסוג הנבואה הזה היכולת לקלוט את הנכון והרצוי באופן תמים פשוט לא התחכמות מיותרת הייתה שרה גדולה מאברהם. The ability to just see something and accept it the way it was, without any thoughts, without any suspicions, without any complexities of turning it round and redirecting it, and cynicism and sarcasm brought Sarah closer to God. Imagine if someone said something to you and you just believe them. You just believe them without questioning the amount of time, the amount of suspicion that is in a room. That you know, when I used to have Dr. Yochevez's job, I was even accused by a girl once of making security limitations because I didn't want the girls to go out on a Monday night. So I told them that there was a terrorist in town. So the girl said I made up the story. So I said, if you really believe that that's the kind of person I am, I think you should leave the school. I mean, I'm some kind of evil doer. There was an actual security scare. I stood in front of the school. I said, the security scare we're staying in tonight. She was so frustrated because she wasn't going to get her pizza. She came up to me and said, you made it up because you don't want us to go out. And I said, wow. Oh my word. Oh my word. That's worse than the rumors that I look at films at night of you coming out of your apartments. You know, that's even worse than that rumor. The cynicism, if your life is so suspicious of every single thing that everyone's saying all the time, how can you live life? How can you live life? You can't live life. You know, if you come from America or England or Africa or Australia or Canada or Switzerland, wherever you come from, I'm sure you have the sukkahs in your countries of conspiracies. If you speak about Dallas and JFK, books upon books have been written about who killed JFK, and books in this country have been written about who killed Yitzhak Rabin. And every time something on Corona, conspiracy, Coronas, they start speaking conspiracy, I leave the room. I can't stand it. I just can't listen to it. I thought people die of Corona. Everything's a conspiracy. The whole way is this a conspiracy, this a conspiracy. Then they pretended. I can't do it. I was in a donor's house once, and they started talking about the conspiracy, and I was about to burst, and Jeremy kicked me under the table. We'll lose money if you give your opinion here. Just listen to the conspiracy and nod. I don't know what a conspiracy is or isn't, but I do know that if you live your life thinking that everything is a conspiracy, your life isn't worth living. It's just not a life. You just don't believe anyone says ever. You're always reading between the lines. Everything is controversial. Everything is a question. You can't live your life. In that way, it's not to say Abraham is also called a tamim, but the tamimut of Sarah, says Rav Amital, made her an incredibly close person to God because she just believed. And that belief that brings down barriers. You understand that every time you don't believe in someone, every time you don't agree with someone, it creates another barrier. And we're interested in removing barriers. In any relationship, we're interested in removing barriers. The fact that we spent such intimate time together through such a crisis has removed tons of barriers. My closest relationships with students have been in years where there have been big security issues, or the Corona year where we were here together all the time. The more intimate, the more true we are with each other, the less barriers there are. The less barriers there are, the more kesher there is. But he adds something else here, Rav Amital, which I want to tell you Ba'al Peh, that he adds here about Sarah Imenu. And this is what I spoke about at my mother's hesped when I wrote about my dad made a book. He made a book about my mother, and he printed certain hespedim. When we look at our imahot, it's really interesting because you don't really need, I'm not a feminist, but I run a girls' school. I'm not a feminist, meaning I don't believe that. I believe in the value of women and who they are. I don't need to have them do what men do just to prove who they are. I don't believe in that. It's been in Judaism since the word go. Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. You're looking there, and you can see that these are the people who decided. They fixed the future. They were the people who made the decisions, really. So they weren't the front people. Who cares? Jeremy's also not a front person, and he does so much. He organizes so many things. So his name isn't in lights all the time. But he organizes this, he's treasurer of this, he's governor of this. The Ikar is to get things done, and they got things done. But Rabbi Mital pointed out something very interesting. If you look through the psukim with Sarah, this is just the psukim. It's different by Rivka. And it's different by Rachel. But if you look through the Psukim with Sarah, you won't really find that she did anything at all. She really didn't. Let's run through it very quickly. What did Sarah Imenu do? She married Avram. We weren't invited to the wedding. The Torah doesn't tell us about the wedding. It's a fait accompli. They're already a married couple in Lech Lecha. Sarai Ishto. And Rashi tells us that they did Gior together. It's not in the Psukim that they did Gior together. They went down to Egypt again. She was a bit of a korban there. She was his sister and not his wife. There was a scandal there. They came out of there. She's not really involved in the destruction of Sodom. She's not involved in the 4 and 5 Kings War. She's not involved in the Akedah. She's not involved in anything at all. Yet these are the best psukim describing an av or an imah in the entire Torah. And Rav Amital says something which was so important to me. It's such an important message. I don't know whether you're at that place, but it was important for me because when I heard the message, I was at that place. Sometimes in life, you get the impression that the only way that you can achieve or do something is if it's big, massive. And if it's not massive, it doesn't count. It has to be something massive. It has to be something of consequence. I have to be the head of an organization. I have to be the director. I have to be the prime minister. I have to be a politician. I have to be in a position where my achievement isn't an achievement. Ladies, it is so not true. Rav Amital says the greatness of Sarah Imenu is that she was a regular, good Jewish woman who led from within. And that's all. That's what she did. She has no claim to fame. Wasn't involved in the Akedah. She wasn't involved in Lech Lecha directly. She went with her husband. She wasn't involved in Brit Milah. She wasn't involved in any of the stories that Avram is involved. We've got loads of stories about Avram Avinu in the Torah and in the Midrash. We have no stories whatsoever about Sarah, but she was the greatest of women. The achievements that we have in our lives are not simply about the status that we gain, doctor, professor. It used to be the most honorable thing to be the mother of a family. And in certain societies, it's turned into a dirty word. I can tell you, ladies, and you know this anyway, there is no greater achievement in life than bringing up children. There is no greater achievement in life. There is no harder task in life than marriage and educating children, especially today, when children are exposed to so many things at such a young age, and they have control over things that their parents don't even know that they can use. And it's almost a dirty word now. You mustn't get married, mustn't have children. The reason that France is 45% Muslim is because regular Christian people don't have children anymore. They don't have families. Religious Muslims do, and therefore Belgium is 60%. And it happens in every country. The only reason it hasn't happened in this country is because the Haredi and the religious Zionist community have a lot of children as well. So the demographics work slightly differently. But family is like a dirty word. Sarah was an imah. She was an imah who was directing the future of Am Yisrael. But what Rav Amital wants to stress in this essay is that her greatness is her being a good, tamim human being. But sometimes we don't have to, shouldn't take away from aspirations of achievement, but there should be an understanding here that to be a regular, good balabayit is an achievement. It's a good thing. I still remember, and now it's even more poignant now. I remember when my wife's younger sister got married, and they asked me to say Sheva Brachas and to speak at the Sheva Brachas. At the time, I was doing my last Rabbanut Mivchan in Shabbat, which is a very, very big sugya. Shabbat is the biggest smicha exam, covers a lot of ground. It's a whole chelik of the Mishnah Berurah with Rishonim, Achronim, and the Gemaras. And I was right in the middle of that, of becoming a Rav and being a Rav and being a Rav. And something just caught me. I was sitting at the Sheva Brachas and I looked around the table. My wife has, four sisters and a brother. 4 sisters and a brother, 3 sisters and a brother. They're 5. No, they're 5. 3 sisters and a brother. And already at that stage, I was able to look around the table and see a family of Bnei Adam. And And I remember that's what I spoke about the Sheva Brachas. I said, we have our aspirations. I was totally caught up in smicha, passing an exam and status or whatever. I remember saying there that that's not the ikar. The ikar isn't the status. There can be no greater accomplishment than looking around a room and seeing the family that you have put together. There's no greater accomplishment, whatever they tell you. Not a Harvard degree, not a whatever. There's no greater accomplishment than having a good marriage and having a family. There is no greater thing, and that's what he says is the greatness of Sarah Imenu, and that makes her as great as anyone else. Her tumimut mitzad echad, and the fact she's just a regular person who does regular stuff, and people shouldn't be put off by that. It has to be big, it has to be great. There have to be 100 people. Sometimes I speak to people, because we've got Canaan already got a big school. People phone me all the time. Bring your girls to this. Bring your girls to that. And I put them through the grill. I ask them every time, what is it? What's the educational value to this? What is it? Because if you just want another 100 girls so you can take a photo, so that you can say that 300 people at the event at Midrash Arova is easy because it gets you a third of your people. I'm not coming. I'm not wasting my girls' time so that you can have a photo with 100 girls in it. I want to know what you're doing. I want to know what the program is. But no, it's big. It's big. It's going to be big. I don't care. I'm not interested in big. I'm interested in truth. I'm interested in, I don't care about big. The work that we do here, we don't do groundwork. It's girl after girl. Why do you need to go? It's girl after girl. It's the work of ants. It's the work of individuals. It's not grandiose. It's not one event. It's working one after one. That's the first comment about Sarah. Go to the Nativot Shalom. I want to now connect Sarah with Sarah's death. Now you know the classic story of Sarah's death. Sarah gave birth to Yitzchak when she was 90. This I alluded to last week. She is 127 when she dies, and the Midrash suggests that she dies because of the Akedah. You know that Midrash, right? The Midrash that says that she dies because of the Akedah. She gets a heart attack and she dies. And therefore we proved last week that Yitzchak was 37 at the Akedah, right? Because she dies 127. He was born when she was 90. Have a look at this comment from the Nativot Shalom. I'm not so interested in the comment from the Nativot Shalom, but I want it as an introduction to this Eish Kodesh. After this Eish Kodesh, ladies, you're not going to go anywhere tonight. After this Eish Kodesh. This Eish Kodesh is, I don't know, it's lucky most of these seats have like hands, because otherwise you might even fall off your seat and we'll all be in terem. But I have to go to the Nativot Shalom before I go to the Eish Kodesh. Nativot Shalom says, Lule demistafina, היה אפשר לומר על פי זה עניין ותמות שרה, שלאחר שראה השטן, כי אברהם אבינו נתגבר גם על הניסיון הזה. We're going to deal with this midrash in detail in a moment. Sarah saw that she saw that Abraham was about to kill Yitzchak. חבל תחבולה חדשה כדי להכשילו, שידע השטן כי הגיע זמנה של שרה להסתלק מן העולם. It was her time to die, so the Satan came to Sarah and told her that Abraham was about to kill Yitzchak. וסיבב כך שבהגיע זמנה יבשרו לה שיזדמן בנה לשחיטה כמעט שלא נשחט. These are the words, כמעט שלא נשחט. He was almost killed, but he wasn't killed, and she died. Now she was meant to die at that time, but the Satan came at that time to make it look like she died because of the Akedah. That it should look like she died because of the Akedah. The Midrash is trying to explain, or the Nativot Shalom is trying to explain why the Pasuk says, Shnei chayei Sarah. It says she was 127 years, and it says Shnei chayei Sarah, that she lived her full life. She lived a complete life. You shouldn't think that she died because of the Akedah, but you might have thought she died because of the Akedah, because her death was juxtaposed to the Akedah. So let's read on. וזאת כדי שיחשבו כל העולם וכן אברהם שפרחה נשמתם מאחמה בצורת העקדה. It looks, and if you look at it on the surface, that she died when she heard bad news. Older people, they hear bad things or good things. If they're shot, they collapse. I once surprised my grandma. So you're on site tonight, my grandma. I once surprised my grandma. I turned up in England and she opened the door and she saw me and she pashut collapsed. She just collapsed. I never ever surprised her again. She just fell back. She fainted. She said, "Oh, David," she just collapsed. So people can. So it looks like if you're learning the Akedah like Rashi, like Ramban, like most of our Mefarshim, that Sarah died because of the Akedah. She didn't die, Baruch Hashem. She just collapsed. So that's not why it's on your side. Now he says like this. The Nativot Shalom, this is a long essay. He's dealing with the pasuk we say every night in Mariv. The pasuk is v'haser Satan milfanenu umeacharenu. We should remove the Satan, the Yetzer, from before and after. He wants to say that not only is there a Yetzer that stops us doing things, once we've done them, once we've overcome and we've actually done them, they might get us to regret doing them. I did a good act and then it makes me regret doing it. I'm sorry I did it. I'm sorry I got up for davening. I'm upset that I did it. There is a Yetzer after a Maaseh. So he wants to say in the Tivot Shalom that the Satan, even though he couldn't stop Avram from doing what he did, he wanted Avram to regret his act. So what did he do? He tried to make it look that Sarah died because of the Akedah. And so that Avram would regret in retrospect doing the Akedah, because if that's what caused Sarah's death, he's very upset about it. Then Avram would regret retrospectively that he did the Akedah. If Sarah died because of the Akedah, then Avram would regret. And the Satan wanted them to regret. I'm sure you've had this many times in your life where you've done something good and you've overcome something, but then you've been sorry that you did it, and it's kind of spoiled the good action. But she did not die in the middle of her life. It had come, her time had come to die. And that's why the Torah enumerates the piece we saw before, that God says it enumerates the life of Sarah, because you should know that even if she lived a pashut life, she was a great person. You don't have to be a great person to be a great person, in our words. That was the way Rav Amital saw it. The Tivot Shalom doesn't see it that way. He says that the years of Sarah were enumerated here and were underlined to underline the fact that she died in her time, and it wasn't because of the Akedah, and Abraham didn't fall for it. He didn't regret the Akedah because apparently she died because of the Akedah. That's when she was meant to die. And now if you look in the Psukim in the beginning of Chayei Sarah, the first pasuk says that Avram came lispot leSarah v'livkota, to eulogize Sarah and to cry for her. The kaf in the word livkota is a small kaf. It's a small kaf. The Balaturim says that Avram didn't cry a lot. And no one knows what he means. What do you mean he didn't cry a lot? This is his wife. Why didn't he cry a lot? Why would it be bad for Avram to cry a lot? But that's what the Balaturim says. He doesn't explain why. He says a small kaf, a liv kota, is to say that when Avram came to the funeral of Sarah at Hebron, he didn't cry a lot. And the Tivot Shalom says, now I'm telling you why I didn't cry a lot. Because he didn't want people to think that there was regret for the Akedah. Because she died in juxtaposition to the Akedah, and then people would have seen Avram crying. They might have misinterpreted that cry not for his love of his wife, but his regret that he was the indirect cause of her death. Interesting. It's an interesting piece. It's not really what I want. The fundamental ethos of Nativot Shalom is that Sarah died in her time. You got to hear this Eish Kodesh in the context of where we are and where we've been and what we've seen and what we've heard. The context, historical context of the Eish Kodesh, this is Chayei Sarah 1940. It's 1940. There's no ghetto. Chayei Sarah means it's around this time of the year. It's October 1940. November 1940, maybe. The Germans have just taken control of Warsaw. It's the first time that Piasetzna has said anything since his son and daughter-in-law and mother-in-law were killed in the Blitzkrieg. They were killed Sukkot time. This is about a month later. He hasn't said a word since they died. There's nothing. You have Bereshit. I think there's no Lech Lecha. There's nothing in Lech Lecha. I don't think there's anything in Noach. It goes straight to chayei Sarah. And he doesn't say anything for 4 weeks. He's dealing with absolute, there's no one left at home. Right? His son was his only son. Elimelech was his only son. You saw Elimelech's grave in Warsaw, right? Rabbi Elimelech's son was his only son and daughter-in-law. And his mother-in-law, his wife's dead already. He's got nothing left. And then the essay is written in that context. Now remember what I said already. Nativot Shalom says that Sarah died in her time. She died of age, and the Satan tried to trick Avram that it was because of the Akedah. Hear this, Eish Kodesh ladies. Look, my hairs go on end when I see these things. So look, it's just my body is like, oh my God. ונבין מה מרמז זה לנו שבכל הצדקניות הנזכרות בתורה לא נאמר כל כך גדלות כמו Sarah. Same question. No one mentions anywhere else gadlut like they do by Sarah. So we have Rav Amital's answer, we have the Tivot Shalom's answer. Listen to Rav Kalorah Kamu מפי עצמנו. השם ייקום דמו. ועוד זה יותר פלא שגם באברהם אבינו שאמר לכמה שנה בכל כלל. Later on, even we hear about Avram's years, it doesn't say this. So Rashi פירש גם כן שנאמר שהיה בלא חטא. Says he was בלא חטא ומכל מקום לא חזר, פסוק פעם ב' לומר שני חיי אברהם. It only says שני חיי Sarah. What's so great about Sarah? What did Sarah do? What is so amazing about Sarah? So we're just going to digress a second. Omnam, Ita b'Sefer HaKodesh Ma'or Hashemesh. The Ma'or Hashemesh was also Kalonimus Kalman. In fact, he is named after the original Kalonimus Kalman, who's buried in the big Krakow cemetery, not the Ramah cemetery. Bereish Parsha Va'era. Listen to this, ladies. Meharav HaKadosh Ish Elokim Moreno Rav Menachem Mendel Mirimenov. Listen to what Rav Menachem Mendel said. Ala Gemara, it's a Gemara in Brachot. Ne'ema Brit b'melach, v'ne'ema Brit b'yisurin. The Gemara says the word Brit is used with salt, and the word Brit is used with yisurin when we go through suffering. Ma melach memateket habasar, just as salt makes meat edible, af yisurin memarkin kol avonotav shel adam, so suffering will get rid of someone's sins, make you into a better person. Dahainu, but then Menachem Mendel Mirimenov adds, but let's remember, ma melach אם מוסיף יותר מחישיור, אי אפשר לקבל הנאה מהבשר. If you put too much salt on the meat, you can't eat it. It becomes inedible. כך ייסורים יהיו ממוזגים שהוא יכולת לקבלם ויהיו ממוזגים ברחמים. Too much suffering will destroy a human being. That's what Rav Kalonimus Kalmani's first words. So that midrash, and what Reb Menachem Mendel Mirimenov says from that midrash. So you make meat good by adding salt. And people are improved by suffering, by challenges. But if you add too much salt to the meat, you destroy it. And if people are made to suffer too much, you destroy them. I was in a shiva house yesterday afternoon. The father of Mickey Mark was killed in a terrorist act 7 years ago. His son Shlomi was killed in a motorcycle accident 2 years later. His nephew was killed on Simchat Torah fighting in one of the kibbutzim. And his son Pedaya was killed last week fighting in Gaza. And you're sitting with that family and you're thinking towards Shamayim, it's too much melach, it's too much salt. And there are times when you look at our history It's just too much salt. Just too much salt. If it says a Rebbe can say it, I can say it too. Doesn't mean I love God less. It doesn't mean I'm not less. It's too much salt. It's too much salt. And on top of that, we have to hear the moans and groans of people who don't even know where Palestine is, about innocent people who raped and attacked our citizens. We're not allowed to defend ourselves. There are innocent people there, but we don't have to just die. Then we have to be told it didn't happen. Then we have to be told that our soldiers did it within 3 weeks of something happening. It's too much salt. It's too much salt. You can be elevated to a degree, but if the suffering just goes on and on and on, if all you ever do is spend your life in a shiva house, it's too much salt. And we're allowed to talk to God about this. We're allowed to turn to God and say, it's too much salt. And now see what he says. It's the first time the Piatzesna spoke since his son was killed, and his daughter-in-law, and his Rashi Piresh, why was Sarah's death juxtaposed to the Akedah? I'm going to tell you what he says, and then very, very different to Nitivot Shalom. The Piatzesna Rebbe says, I don't know that it's Pshat, it's just the message. He said Sarah made herself die because she wanted God to know that it's too much salt. It's too much salt. It's just too much salt. For future generations, she wasn't meant to die. That's what he said. She made herself die because she wanted to act as a son of God. This is too much. This is myself. This is going to happen in every generation. Jews are going to be shechted in every generation. This is too much salt. Rashi, Hainu Moshe Rabbeinu Raya Mehemna Samach Mitat Sarah LaAkedat Yitzchak Kedei over the page Kedei. Kedei Lamitz Tov Ba'adenu Lahalot Shal Yidei Yisurim Chas V'Chalil Yoter Midai Ma Na'aseh. We get too much Yisurim. What are we going to do? Like, how much can we do? How much? How much can it be? How much does our people have to go through? You know, you ask a kid today, what will happen when Mashiach comes? They say there'll be shalom. Australia has shalom. Canada has shalom. They're such tzaddikim. We have to wait for Mashiach to get shalom. Just shalom. Just to live here in peace. There's such tzaddikim in the United States of America. No one sins there. In England, in Israel, we have to pray for shalom. Why does it have to be that way? ועוד אם נעשה כן בשרה סירקה גדולה כזו שבקוף כבכף לחטא ושני חיי ישראל שכולן שנים לתורה מכל מקום לא יכלה לסבול ייסורים קשים ומכל שכן אנחנו. Sarah was saying, if I cannot deal with these ייסורים, the regular Jews can definitely not deal with them. כמעט שפרחה. כמעט שנשחט. He wasn't even killed. It's just a trauma. A trauma after trauma after trauma. Yoter midai melach. It's just too much melach. When I found out about Pedaya's death at about 6:09 in the morning, my brother-in-law sent a text, but no one was up. I just came back from shul. No one was up. That's why I didn't come in last Wednesday, because I wanted to tell them. So the first thing I asked the family was not to write WhatsApps. So I didn't want my kids to see this through WhatsApp. And my wife was running, and she came back, and I told her to sit down, and I told her what happened. And she laughed. She said, it can't be true. How can that be? 4 people in the same family. How can that be? And then she kind of turned to God, and she said, what's going on? 4 people in the same family? It's a family of 11 children, 10, 11 children, right? You go to the Shiva, there's still, Baruch Hashem, a lot of children and grandchildren. And the father was such an incredible guy. And see what he says in the next paragraph. עוד אפשר לומר שגם שרה אימנו עצמה, שנתנה כל כך לליבה מעשיה, כדעת שפרחה נשמתה, לטובת ישראל עשתה. That's what he says, לטובת ישראל עשתה. She died, she made herself die, להראות להשם איך יהיה אפשר לישראל לסבול ייסורים יותר. We can't suffer so much. We can't suffer so much. It can't go on forever. It's like pour verkehrte Nativot Shalom, that she died in her time, and it was a test of Abraham. He said, no, she made herself die to show HaKadosh Baruch Hu that it's too much salt. It's too much salt. ואפילו מי שבחמלת השם נשאר חי, and even though he didn't die, גם החי יסורב מכל מקום חלקי כוחו מוחו ורוחו נשבור ונאבדו ממנו. That is what we're going to do with our boys. Be'ezrat Hashem, they'll come back after what they've seen, the animals they've seen in Gaza. People standing in front of you and firing a missile at your face. What are we going to do with our children? How are we going to be able, Be'ezrat Hashem, they'll come back? How are we going to bring them up? They're like you. What they've seen, what we've seen, you're Talmidei Melech. The children from the last war who are parted from the army because they're so traumatized by what they saw. This is face-to-face combat, you understand? It's not planes dropping. The boys in Gaza are face-to-face with chayot. So Mali Kadli Kula, Mali Kadli Paga, so you kill them half, you kill them whole. You're Talmidei Melech. So you would think that this is such a complex piece that he's saying. You would think that she sinned because she gave up her life to make this point to God. So the pasuk says she didn't sin. It's not considered a sin because she went to the Sanger al Am Israel. What a way to learn the psukim. And you understand now what I meant. I don't know this pshat. There's a massive chidush here. You have a Hasidic Rebbe, ladies, so he didn't leave Judaism. He died saying Shema Yisrael. And there are other drashas that he gives talking about the closeness of a Jew with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and how close we are to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to never give up in our faith of HaKadosh Baruch Hu right to the end. You see the emes of the Hasidic Rebbe? He's just turning around to God. So in front of his Hasidim, he's saying, you've got to believe. And every so often he turns around to God and he says, Talmidei Melech. I know you know what you're doing. I got no idea. It just nothing makes any sense. So we carry on believing. Nothing makes any sense here. They lie and they lie and they lie in people's faces on television cameras, and the world laps it up like it was Mr. True speaking. It must be true because Hamas said. It must be true because Nasrallah said. Nasrallah HaTzadik HaGadol HaGaon, who's never lied in his life. So he said that our soldiers killed our civilians. That must be true. And you're thinking, Ribono Shel Olam, I have to stand up and defend this? That the head of the United Nations says this happens? Not in a vacuum? The head of the United Nations? So what is the United Nations? Too much basar. We're not just dying. We have to hear this tripe, this garbage. It's such an incredibly important piece. We're allowed in our lives to turn to God and scream out. We don't question God's justice. We don't question that God knows what he's doing. But am I a big enough person to be able to take it? It's an incredible comment. You'll tell me Talmidei Melech. It's too much Melech. There's three such different interpretations. But there's another brilliant comment that I have to give you. Not to finish on a sad note. It's not sad, it's truth. I think that if someone went to, I've told you this before now in this context, someone went to the Baal Shem Tov, new tzaddik came to town, and they went to the Baal Shem Tov to try and check the legitimacy of the new tzaddik. And they went to the Baal Shem Tov and said, how do we know that he's a tzaddik? And the Baal Shem Tov said, go up to him and you ask him if he davens with kavanah all the time. And if he says yes, you should know he's a fraud, he's a liar. Everyone, rabbis with beards, rabbis with pairs, not just me, but me, if only me, just me. Okay, I'm in good company. You have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're allowed to turn around to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're allowed to say, tell me that basa. It was like melech, it's too much melech. Ladies, I haven't slept in a month. I haven't slept in a month. You're turning on melech. I'm allowed to turn to God. I believe in God. I believe that God knows what he's doing. I believe that what God is doing has a plan. I'm just a human being. I'm just a regular human being. How much more? We thought the Holocaust was Gog and Magog. How much more? How much more? I don't say it as questioning. I believe it's full, but my relationship has to involve my ability to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, and I know he has an answer because I've read Eov and I know the answers. It doesn't stop my emotion. It doesn't stop my feeling. Another soldier and another soldier and another soldier. So many mixed emotions that this piece by the Piet says that, and just to be aware, historically speaking, he said this a month after it happened. This wasn't like a gut reaction 2 days after something happened. His son was killed Sukkot time. It's a month later, right? It's a month later in Parshas. He didn't say a word. This is his first drasha. So it's a true emotion. It's a legitimate emotion in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We need to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, I know you know what you're doing. You just got no idea. I've got no idea what you're doing. You have no idea. These people that we're reliving Tanakh with Haman and Paro, each generation again and again and again. I want to finish with what I started with in announcements. There is another midrash at the beginning of this parsha that talks about, it's a very strange midrash. The midrash says that Rabbi Akiva was Yoshev v'Doresh, he was doing a drasha, Yitchilu litnamnein, and the chevra were falling asleep. No. Bikesh lo oraran, he wanted to wake them up. So he said the following sentence. He said, Ma ra'ata Esther limloch al kuf kaf zayin medinot. Why was Esther merited to rule over 127 countries? Tavo bat bita shel Sarah shachayta kuf kaf zayin shanim. So the great-granddaughter, she's much more than the great-granddaughter of Sarah, who lived 127 years. Timloch al kuf kaf zayin medinot. That's a drasha. Rabbi Akiva wanted to wake the people up, so he said, in our words, or in my words, he said, Esther ruled over 127 provinces because Sarah lived for 127 years. What in heaven's name does that mean? What does that mean? Because there are 227s, that's it, 127. That. So the Chidush Arim, you know who the Chidush Arim is? The Gera Rebbe, the first Gera Rebbe. He was a Talmid Muvhak, Talmid Chaver of the Kotzker. Chidush Arim. Did you go? You went to go. So you were by the Chidush Arim and Sfat Emet together, right? It's a beautiful little ohel. You could live there, really. You could live there in that ohel. And so the Chidush Arim says like this. He asked a question, Kacha. Who would fall asleep in the drasha of Rabbi Akiva? Mainly you'd fall asleep in mine. Can you imagine, tonight's guest, Tuesday night, we don't have YU, we don't have Eitan and Lital, Rabbi Akiva's coming! I think you'd turn up, right? You'd turn up for that. I mean, it's an option. It's optional. but Rabbi Akiva's coming. So you imagine coming in and Rabbi Akiva's coming to talk to you. Rabbi Akiva's coming to talk to you. And you start. So he says, what does the Midrash mean? People were falling asleep. Listen carefully. What a vault. Rabbi Akiva, they weren't falling asleep in his drasha. The Chidush Yarim says they were falling asleep in their lives. They weren't living their lives. Days were passing, months were passing, years were passing, and they weren't doing anything. Rabbi Akiva saw that people around him were falling asleep in their lives. He wanted to wake them up. So what did he say? He said, if Esther ruled over 127 provinces and Sarah lived 127 years, that means a year equals a province. If a year equals a province, that means a month is a town. If a month is a town, that means a street is a week. If a street is a week, then a house is a day. You don't smash houses down, don't smash your days. Don't waste your days. He says you don't waste physical assets, you don't waste your life. That's what the Chidush Yarim said. If you understand the comparison between buildings to years, then understand that in the same way that you would not in any way be negligent with a building, do not be negligent with your time. I can't say it enough. I said to myself much more than I said to you. Time is not money. Time goes. It doesn't come back. Money goes and it comes back, and it goes and it comes back. There are ups and downs. Time, ladies, only ever goes. There is a poem which is written on the wall of the shul in Tikachin. And the poem says like this: Adam doeg al damav, a person worries about his money, ve'eno doeg al yamav, and doesn't worry about his life. Damav einam ozrim, the money doesn't help. Ve'yamav einam chozrim, and the days never come back. It's just by the tzedakah box in Tikachin. I thought it was Ibn Ezra, but it might be someone else who wrote that. It's something that chayei Sarah comes up at the beginning, and Avraham Bar Biyamim comes on later on. What does Abraham Bar Biyamim mean? It means when Abraham died, he brought every day with him. Every single day of his life, he lived. Every single moment of his life, he lived. Bar Biyamim. That should be a bracha for us ladies, that we are Ba'im Biyamim. That we come with our days, that there isn't a day wasted. You can't write off a day, you can't cross off a day. Every day has its value, every day has its purpose. 127 provinces, 127 years. Shnei chayei Sarah, she lived a full life. To live a full life means that you don't waste a minute. It's intense, sure, it's intense. I'll finish with something that one of my rabbis said to me. He died a young man. You know, Emmanuel Bernstein was here a few weeks ago. His father was my Rebbe. He came as a guest speaker, Rabbi Emmanuel Bernstein. Father died, 56, his father was. He was my son's named after my son. Yitzchak is named after him. And I used to come to shiur early because I used to be able to get divrei Torah from him. So I used to come to shiur early. He used to sit at the desk and get his notes together. I used to sit and drive him crazy with shilas and questions, and very opinionated. He was like an Irishman, very opinionated. He had something to say about everything. And it was Pesach Sheni. My mum's going to finish with this. It was Pesach Sheni. And in Pesach Sheni is in Parshat Ba'alotcha. And he turned around and he said, David, I'll tell you something. He said, you can, he said, anything you can do in life, you can do twice. If you fail your driving test, you can do it again. Some people do it a few times. So if you fail an exam, you can do it again. People sometimes, they get married a second time. And then he turned to me and he said, there's one thing you can't do twice in life. Life itself. You cannot do life twice. This is it. Today is today, 6:36 and 20 seconds. Will never ever be again. It's gone. The present is a flick of the eye, so we have to know how to use our time. Okay, thank you.